look at that. Yeah. So what we're looking to do is just bring, because one of the issues with podcasting is really at the end of the day is because the price that we pay for this access that we have to it is we effectively giving away everything we've got for free. Yeah. And although there's lots of people out there that will tell you how to make money, it's very difficult to make money from podcasting.
It's a long game.
And even then, there's no guarantee that you're going to make money from it as well.
You should always be doing it for the love of it initially, at the root of it.
Yeah. So one of the things I teach when I'm working with people is let's try and find a way to do this podcast that doesn't really change what you're doing already. The ideal situation is you're just adding 20 minutes on to what you already do. So say, for example, like you were already meeting people like me. I was like, well, why not set it up so that you can have a chat with them and you record that conversation because you're going to go and see them or do whatever this is and just arrange to have a chat with them and record that. So you're going to go and see me anyway. Let's do that. And then at least in that initial phase before you come down and invest in the studio and all the time and commitments and everything that comes with that. But the fact is that these platforms like Spotify, as great as they are in terms of what they provide and what they brought it to, is every time somebody listens to one of my podcasts, of which there are more. In fact, there are more people have listened to my podcasts than have ever lived. It's a fact. When you no, on a serious note, do you use Podchaser?
Yeah.
If you go my profile on Podchaser,
I remember when I registered it, I looked at your profile and I was like, okay, so I kind of got an idea what to do.
But I think on there, and it's not got everything. It's not got every podcast I've ever been on.
It's got the Football Daily on there, hasn't it?
Yeah, but it's got loads of stuff on there. But I think it's like if you listen, if it does a time thing of how many, like when you play Grand Theft Auto, it tells you how many hours you've been driving your car.
Yeah.
So I think if you wanted to listen to every podcast that I've ever been on, it's like, I don't know, 3 years or something now, just constantly. Yeah, so every time somebody listens to one of my podcasts now I put a lot of effort and time and energy into what I do. And the people that I work with do that as well. And a lot of it is hustling. Being completely honest, like we managed to achieve some amazing things because built up a reputation that people will say yes to me now when I ask them for things. And they've been very generous with their time. And so a lot of people have done it for favors. A lot of people have done it for heavily discounted rates for what they're doing. And even then, I'm not necessarily making the money back from it. It might just be here and there, sort of, these things are covering it. And my other work allows me to do these things. But when it goes on Spotify and somebody listens on Spotify, effectively, very small, Spotify are making money from that. Yeah. Because when somebody's listening to my podcast, they're not having to pay Taylor Swift 3p or 0.0003p.
Yeah.
Right. But the person that's listening they're either benefiting from the adverts that are going to that person or they're paying a premium subscription. So on a very small scale and very small scales, they're making money. And so it is skewed that way. So it's a double-edged sword in that way. Like podcasting has allowed these things to get out there, but the genie is out of the bottle in a lot of them. And so you need to have, as great as your idea might be, as creative as you might be, you need to have a real business sense now if you're going to make money from it. Now, you might stumble across it, it might happen. But one thing that has changed for me definitely in the last 5 years is my approach to advertising and marketing. Funnily enough, you picked up on when we looked at all the little stuff we had on our Instagram for the champ. There's so much content there from just the two of us, right? And that's because my belief now is you need to spend more time promoting your podcast than you do making it. Now, that's not to say, don't spend time making your podcast, right? But hear me when I say this. If it's taking you an hour to make your podcast, spend 2 hours promoting it. Right? Yeah. A very simple rule of thumb. Yeah. If it's taking you a week to make it, spend 2 weeks to promote it.
I think a lot of people think it's like, it's out, I've promoted it, done.
I mean, I was exactly the same. I remember one of there's a guy, Jason over in America, who runs Monkey Poo Studios, and they do 7 Days a Geek podcast, and he literally he was for years he like has a normal day job, has a load of kids, but he was basically doing a different podcast each day, and he runs his own thing every October where he does like a 24-hour podcast festival with podcasts from all over the world. But he was putting an episode every single day, and so I really sort of gelled with this guy when I met him, and he got me on as a guest on his show, and give me all these quick fire questions. It's about 5 years ago, and he says to me, "What's your definition of success? When it comes to podcasting, what's your definition of success?" And I was like, honestly, most of the time it's press and publish. Yeah, and that holds true. That holds true because the thing is, it's like you've done it, you've created something, and it's there. Now, I'm all for that. That's great. But if you seriously want to make an impression in this, if you want to get what you're doing out in front of more people listening to it, you need to work even harder on that side of things. And I'm talking to you here after a crazy month.
Yeah,
all right,
absolutely.
I've had a crazy month. I mean, if
you had COVID as well.
Yeah, so I did Edinburgh, then I had COVID, then I did wrestling in the gravy. From that, we ended up I was quoted on CNN.
Yes, I saw
that, as myself.
Yes,
I was on 5 Live as the character. We were on. There was video footage of me used by Lad Bible. Have just put something out today. The Metro, the Mail Online, Reuters picked it up, went everywhere. So that T-shirt that I showed you before, that Wrestling with the Champ logo, was seen around the world. We went to. I think we went number 1 in wrestling podcasts in Sweden, which is a different story. And it's all these things happen. And yet, I've not driven here in a Ferrari. I've not, I've not had people sort of like brought my chef with me so I can nip out and have a deconstructed pot noodle. It's, there's all this work is here, and I don't necessarily have, like, if again, this is the thing of like, I've got nothing to feed my kids with from it.
Yes.
Yeah. And so I'm able to do a lot of what I'm doing because I don't have those commitments and those responsibilities, and I'm doing that. Now, I'm not saying you can't do that with those things.
No, but you're also doing other things which allow you to do that as well.
Yes, yeah. So it's a very complicated thing. And so generally, I'm really, like anything in life, somebody says, do this and you make loads of money, right? Or buy this and you'll do this. Not all of them are scam, but just question what they're doing, and it may have worked for them, but that's no guarantee that it's going to work for you. So listen to people, take those lessons from it, and it's exciting. It's a great thing to do, but I'd say, be inspired by people, absolutely be inspired by people, but just recognize that what they've done maybe worked for them, but it's not necessarily the right thing for you.
Or think about how hard they've had to work to get it where it is.
Yeah, and you don't see that because people...
You just see the end result. You see the end product.
Well, here's the thing as well. Like, people are like, especially within podcasting, right? All this thing that you go into these groups, you go into these YouTube channels, all these people that talk about it, and they say, oh, this is what I do, this is what I made, making this. Certain people, like, there's a I don't know if you saw this recently, a podcast was floated. It was put up for sale for $5.5 million. And he didn't say what the podcast was, but Pod News worked out it was probably John Lee Dumas, Entrepreneur on Fire.
Right, yeah.
Which is really interesting because that podcast is a lot of him. So how are they selling it
without him?
Without him, yeah, exactly. So, there is all this money out there, but then people are very, very defensive and very private about it. It's only recently Dave from the School of Podcasting, he started doing it. There's Dave Jackson, great guy.
Yep.
He was over here at the pod show. I met him both as me and as the champ. And he started doing a thing where he's actually openly going, here's my stats. Here's my stats from the show. Here's what is. I'm just kind of going, I'm not pretending, this is what I'm doing. And like some days, like he gets 50 people listen to his show.
Yeah.
And he's been running for like 12, 13 years with this podcast. So much knowledge, so much experience, so much wisdom, so many great connections. And yet, and I think we've become obsessed in terms of like, it's almost like vanity metrics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You should only really compare to yourself at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Thinking about when you get into that level of detail, it's like stats. Don't compare yourself to somebody who's way further down the journey because it's not a fair comparison.
But also the thing is, if your driving motivation is the stats, right? If your driving motivation, say it's our podcast together, right?
Yeah.
And we go, right, we had 100 downloads, right? What's our next thing? Right, let's get 200 downloads.
Mm-hmm.
We hit 200 downloads. What's our next thing? 500 downloads, right? And you're just stuck in this loop. Then it's all about the downloads, right? And you're not. It's not about
The content.
and why you're doing it, what you came into it, or why you. And I think that's important. Now that might be important as well.
The stats should be a byproduct of your creativity. If you're doing it, if you're putting your heart and soul into it, like you say, spending the time not just creating it but promoting it as well. But stats go hand in hand.
Here's the other thing as well. So much of the stats in podcasting, people don't realize this, is based around, especially when it comes to advertising revenue, that first sort of fortnight, that first month window, right? That's what it's based around. But here's the thing, right? People are fucking busy. People have shit going on, right? And it's like, it's not like it used to be. People have the ability and the facility to listen to it later.
Oh, of
right?
course, yeah.
And it's kind of like, and it even happens now in a day-to-day life. How many times have you sent somebody in your family or a friend like a voice note or a text message, and they haven't looked at it for 3 days?
You're like, what are they doing?
Yeah.
Am I not important enough?
Yeah, but it's like, people have got stuff going on, and they'll come around and they'll listen to it, and they go, "Oh, sorry, I missed that dude," whatever. And so you have no right. You have absolutely no right for anybody to listen. You know, you have the right to go and do it, but there's no right. You don't have no.
You can't demand that people listen to it.
No, and so it's a real privilege, and I think this is one of the things that I really got a rediscovered inspiration from doing the live show, because those people have come out, and you see what it means. People are actually stopping doing anything for 45 minutes, plus the time it takes them to get there and whatever. Yeah. To sit and watch your show, and there's a certain arrogance that comes with that. Say, sit here and watch me and do what I'm going to do.
How good I am,
and pay me money, right? And actually, you know, it's so nice to meet these people and get that feedback and engage with them. And sometimes the feedback isn't quite what you'd want to hear, but it's all really valuable, and it gives you that appreciation for it as well. And actually, so the other thing that happens if you get down that listener number and you start obsessing about that, is you get that 100 listeners, you go, right, what's next? 200, right? You forget about that first 100 listeners.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it all becomes about the next. And absolutely don't, because those are your people. Those first 100 people.
Make sure those first 100 stick around.
Exactly. Right. That's the keep what you've got. Yeah. You know, keep those people that are going in. So that's my high horse.
You can't really, there's no right or wrong way, really. It's just general. It's just like you're saying, we're just telling what we've learned from experience, what worked for us, what didn't work for us, might work for you, might not.
Yeah, and it's going to be completely different for me, for you, for anybody watching, listening to this now as well. For Eddie, that we're just looking at his podcast as well. Everybody has a different journey, and so really, you know, the best thing I can say is to do it. Just do something,
because you can't really improve what you don't start.
Yeah.
So a lot of people I've spoken to is the fear of that hit and publish, and like, my voice is going to be out there. What if no one listens? Yeah. No, and I always say, when someone says that, what if no one listens? Nobody will be listening. When you start, nobody's listening.